Hi, everyone. You made it. We made it. It's here. I'm really excited to finally unveil this. We've been working on it. I've been working on this for, and I say we, me and my collective people inside my head, my inside out characters. We've been working on this for months at this point. I think that the original idea came as a joke. A lot of my friends who listen to me yap my little mouth off, yap their ears off, were like, yeah, you should totally start a podcast. And then I bought a mic. And then it just snowballed out of control, and we are here. So, welcome to Lady of the Lore. I'm your lady, the one and only Kelly Ornelas. Very grateful that you've stopped in to hang out with me today. I've got a lot to cover over the next few episodes, but I'm pretty confident that it'll it'll okay, maybe if I spoke English, it will appeal to you because it is so prevalent to all of us. So, I want to start off by introducing myself. Again, my name is Kelly for those of you who do not already know me. I am a grad student at University of Texas at Tyler. This is my second year in the program, and I'm extremely grateful for where I've ended up. I love the people that I learn from. And obviously, when you're passionate about the material that you're learning, it makes it easier to learn. But I also find myself, as the eldest of six children, I'm the natural know it all. If you know any oldest siblings, I feel like this might strike a chord with you. I have taken that and kind of ran with it. And I feel like all that they were not able to do, I want to achieve for them in their name, kind of. So if my goal is to do all of that, I again just have to tap into that real know it all mentality. So here we are. Ask me anything. If I have to be the one leading the charge, I'll do it. That's a burden I must bear. And I'm being sarcastic when I say that, but also serious because at the end of the day, I think that all of these things that I've learned, all of these things that I've spent so much time kind of drowning myself in has a lot of value that not very many people recognize because I feel like they aren't familiar enough with the topic or the topics. So we'll dive into that. I developed extremely niche interests very early on. Very kind of weird. Like looking back at it, there was a point in time, like one summer, that I rewrote the Declaration of Independence for fun. Or was it the Declaration? I think it was the Constitution, actually. Yeah. I can't remember what it was. So obviously it did me no good. But I do remember like applying myself to various things like that. And then once I hit a certain age, it was like, okay, so it's history. There was no other thing for me. And a couple of my professors have said that history is kind of just the retelling of everything that's happened across such a large span of time. And if you really think about it, it's all the dramatic, crazy turns of events and all of these little things that have happened, the people, all the characters that make up these different periods and how life was different back then and what it has done to bring us to now. So, as a Gemini, as someone who is obsessed with being privy to the drama but not in it, like I don't like it when my life is in shambles, obviously. I like to hear about it from other people. Like I'm the therapist amongst my friends because let me hear about all of your problems. I don't want to have any of my own. I'm just the watcher, just the know-it-all. That's really what it is. It's just I like to be in the know, but I don't want to be in it. So, history, does that not seem like a perfect fit? The grand telling of all of the craziest things that have happened across however many years, all of the drama, all of the different things that have happened. Yeah, that's me. Again, so because this started off so like young and early on, it has become a little isolating. I mean, literally, here I am speaking into a microphone, into the void, like I'm not having this conversation with anyone else. And it seems like this is kind of piggybacking off of the fact that I will have conversations with friends and I'll just go off. Like, I found myself doing it a couple of times and I have to be like, Kelly, calm down. Like, wait, these people also would probably like to say something in this dialogue. It's not just me speaking. So, And if I have friends listening to this right now, they're probably imagining themselves in that position that I'm just, I speak and no one really answers. And I think it's because they're listening. And I like to think in my very optimistic purview that they're listening and that they're taking and digesting the things that I'm giving them. But because it's so isolating, it gives you almost like this extra layer to tapping into it and just going that much further, because the more that you dig into this kind of thing, the more that you understand certain things. And I feel like this doesn't just apply to history, but it can apply to a great deal of things. Whenever you develop a passion for something and you continue digging into it, you see a lot of the beauty to it. A lot like between the layers or past certain generalizations of things, like past the real broad narrative of whatever you may have learned or what you understand. Whenever you see all of the crazy tiny things that are a part of it, I probably sound psychotic right now, but there is beauty in it. As pessimistic as you can be, there is enough positive about it to it kind of outweighs it. And I hope that that's all making sense. Hope you're following. Almost naturally, I also developed this love and this affinity for writing. I don't know what it is about putting a pen to paper or letting my fingers glide across the board or across the keyboard for my computer. It's something in it, something in creating, stringing together these words that mean something, that have meaning behind them. And all of these things is that I've studied, when I'm able to write them out and compare them to another event or compare it to another movement, all of these different things, it's become how I interpret the world, interpret events, and interpret all of these items that I've learned. And in my way, it's my form of art, right? That's my creative outlet, if you will. Even if it's my assigned work, I find an immense amount of joy in it, which is very odd, very again, super niche. And you have, if you know, you know. And I I don't know what else to say about that. It's just how I interpret my understanding for others. And if you really, what I like to kind of think about is that speaking was not really my forte, is not really my forte. I feel like I'm not as articulate as I'd like to be for certain things. Again, I'm way better on paper. I do not love, what is it? I like to perceive, I don't like to be perceived. So, me speaking, I can't sometimes get out the things that I want to say. And part of me thinks it's like, I'm like this puppy dog that's like getting really excited about what I have to say. And I can't get it out. And my brain is like, going 1,000 miles an hour and I don't say things correctly. When obviously, when you're typing, when you're writing, you've got an eraser, you can backspace that crap and just try again. And I think that's how I work best. So, creating this podcast was one way to challenge myself to step outside of my comfort zone and say, hey, this is something that I might not be very good at, but one of the most important things for me in educating other people, which I consider to be one of my passions, if not the most important, educating others and just kind of like enlightening people, if you will. It's just what I find joy in, and expressing these crazy ideas that I've learned with other people. In order to do so, I feel like you can't rely on the old school kind of, let's read books and let's take tests over them. Like, I don't feel like that's everyone's best way of learning. And in today's world, when everything is moving a mile a minute, this might be the most accessible way to get information out to people, even if it's uncomfortable for me. And I'm not the only person in the world who knows everything or anything at all, but if I feel like I have something important to say, if you feel like you have something important to say, then I would encourage you to say something, to get it out there. Because, I mean, if we're uncomfortable in the position that we stand in, couldn't we do something about it? So again, podcasting was not in my cards, which is very odd saying that into a microphone. But this is really just about accessibility and kind of, you have a choice to remain in the dark. You have the ability to stick with kind of like the way things are, or we can initiate change. And it's a gamble. Like it's you can decide to stay where we are or say, "Hey, it could be better," or it couldn't. Like that is what having faith is. It's what taking a chance is. It's what living's about, I feel like. And it's also something that we should be aware of is that maybe those little changes that we make are not something that we see the fruits of within our lifetime. Perhaps I make this I create this project and not very many people take hold of it. They don't get much from it. Or they do. There's a couple of people who do and they take it and they teach others with it and they do with this information whatever they will and something comes of it. But I am not aware of it until years down the road. I don't like it's there's like the line in Hamilton that a legacy is planting a seed in a garden that you may never get to see. And I feel that way towards all of the art that I put out in the world, and that's what I feel toward through this, through my writing, through any of it, that even though I might not see the fruits of my labor ASAP, uh something will come of it. As long as you're putting something into the world, I do believe something will come of it. You may call me delusional, I call myself hopeful. Whatever. We have the ability in 2024 when access to information is at an all-time high. We have the ability to learn from one another and like take from the perspectives of many. There is something to be learned from every person in the room that you sit with. The amount of times that, and apparently it's a Southern thing, I didn't know that it was, but I talk to everyone. It does not matter who you are. I think my grandparents were the ones that used to tell me, Kelly, you could literally argue with a brick wall. Like, that is me. I will have a conversation with anyone and everyone. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it's about. It's not even always about like my professional life. If you're wearing a certain like pair of shoes, I can strike up a conversation about that. And I don't know if that's like a common thing, but I've recently learned that it is Southern, that it's the Southern charm, the Southern hospitality kind of thing. So it's just me with, being a Southern belle, I guess, chatting with everyone that I see. My siblings are probably annoyed with it. They're like, God, Kelly, you make friends everywhere. We can't go into Walmart for, God knows, like 30 minutes without me seeing half of the population and knowing at least a quarter of them. But I learned from all of those people. And I think education happens in those conversations, not just in a classroom setting. It happens between the people in a coffee shop, the friends that you run into in the grocery store who want to catch up. It happens in all of these different ways. I mean, if my entire intention in this life is to just learn as much as possible, you're going to find me yapping. You're going to find me talking to anyone who will listen. Today, it's you. Along with that, being uh, as intellectual as I want to be, I'm always asking why. I sound like that one, is it a Vine, I think, where he's like, why? Why? That's how I feel to everything. I find myself asking, yes, XYZ happened, but why? What led to this and what could have been done to prevent it even? And this is kind of applies to more like the historical world of things, but I guess it could also apply to other things as well. But to answer that question, however you ask it, whichever way it applies, because again, it can apply to many different things, you answer it by learning more, by consuming more, by digging deeper into it. So, if what we're doing now is simply peeling back layers after layer after layer, just in search of a better understanding and to ask more questions, like I feel like we're sitting at this point in time where everything is at the tap of a button. And we have the ability, the responsibility, I feel. And again, I feel very firmly that my job is to educate others. I think it was Thomas Jefferson who it was not Thomas Jefferson, it was John Adams. I am so sorry. Not me name dropping and then doing it incorrectly. He was one of, I think, like the second president. I'm not good at presidents, getting there, but not very great. That has been something that lots of people have tried to help me with. I had one friend of mine who tried to drill the presidents into my brain, but it just did not work. No matter how many times he like gave me different ways to remember them, didn't work. But John Adams, also a president, not just a beer. Now that I think about it, he's it's Samuel Adams. That's the beer. Okay, well, honestly, don't criticize me. If you had everything in your brain, you would be confused too. But John Adams, the man, he said, and I'm quoting, "I must study politics and war that my sons may have liberty to study mathematics and philosophy." He said, "My sons ought to study mathematics and philosophy, geography, natural history, naval architecture, navigation, commerce, and agriculture in order to give their children a right to study painting, poetry, music, architecture." And he said this to say that he believed in the ability to create a better world, better than the way that we found it, right? That kind of trope, leave it better than you found it. If I have the ability to do that, I would like to do so. And I'm happy that you care enough to listen to me try. This moment in time is a culmination of all the events, all the people, every little thing that has just brought us here. And if you at some point recently have felt like watching the news is literally like watching a dumpster fire, I promise you that you are not alone in that. I'm sure that you're well aware of how many people are up in arms about everything that we've seen on the television screen or on our little cellular devices. It's my hope, though, that I help to equip you with kind of an understanding of it all as it relates to history, obviously, because that's my expertise in life. And maybe I sound crazy, but I think that it's all connected to our story. And regardless of how different we all are of, our experiences, our perspectives, our cultures, whatever your background may be, we are very different in many different ways. But the one characteristic that we do share is that we're human beings. Unless you somehow manage to reach this podcast on Mars and you're some like alien life form, we are all human beings and we share a common human story, and that is history. It relates to everything. It's a part of everything. It's connected to everything. And you won't understand it until you do. Whenever that like part of your brain unlocks and it's like you get the lore of all of this, like you understand our own lore, then it'll kind of click. You'll see it in everything too. So the fact that I'm over here like pacing back and forth in my bedroom, freaking out about everything and seeing all these connections, I kind of look like that meme. Um, I don't even know where it's from, but it's the guy who's like against the wall with all those papers and the red lines, and he's like, it's all connected. That's how I feel every day of my life. My little inside out people look like that in my brain. And there are just certain parts of this story, this human story, that we aren't aware enough of. And it could be for many different reasons. Another thing that we can ask ourselves is why? Why are we so unaware of various phenomenon that have taken place and have influenced the way that we live today? Do you think that, if there are certain oppressive things or structures that are keeping us from learning them, shouldn't they be toppled? Shouldn't our access to our information, our own information at that, be a little easier? We have a lot more control over our own fate than we seem to realize sometimes. And quoting another founding father, Thomas Jefferson is the one that said something along the lines of, our control of ourselves must be informed by our education. And though he could have been saying it in a different way and meaning, these people need to be college educated or what have you, I believe, again, as I've already said, education happens in many different shapes and sizes. So you can learn you can learn by listening to me, obviously, duh. But you can learn in so many different ways that don't require you to sit at a desk or study from a textbook. Because there are parts of history that maybe you don't seem touched by. Like I can sit here and claim that there are so many issues that we face today that are a part or a product of history. And not really history, but the events that have happened over the course of. And if you feel untouched by those ugliest parts of history, then I want to tell you what a privilege that is. The truth of the matter is, outside of the American experience, that there are multiple civil wars happening right now. There are wars happening in so many different places across the world, in Syria, in Ukraine, in Palestine, so many different places that, yes, we may not be directly affected by the violence that takes place there. But what is the difference between them and us? Like it really dumbfounds me a little bit that yes, we aren't experiencing it now, but is the only thing that keeps us from being them our location? The fact that we were born here or came here. Is it just that? I mean, is it not just our humanity alone that makes us deserving of certain literal human rights? Literally the right to live and to practice whatever we practice freely. That is a topic that's kind of confusing to me, thinking about the experiences of people who don't live here and even the experiences of people who do live within the United States, the people who are still, you know, victims of their freedoms being taken from them or kept from them. Without understanding what kind of agency we hold, couldn't it be that at whatever point in time our freedoms also come under fire and we also end up in the same kind of situation as the people who are under attack in other countries? Here in the United States, not moving this into a worldwide conversation, the freedom of speech is under fire. We're facing a misinformation epidemic. We are being faced with a battle for reproductive rights, for equal human rights that should be afforded to everyone, regardless of their sexual orientation, through healthcare and other discriminatory practices, immigration rights, women's rights, all of these groups who do not always get to enjoy these freedoms that belong to the land of the free and the home of the brave. What qualifications must you meet? And this is honestly an honest question that obviously no one can answer through this microphone, but what qualifications do you have to meet to deserve these freedoms? Because if it's simply living here, then we're kind of bringing me back to the same question. And I think all of this can really be answered. It truthfully can be answered. There are different facets of it that can be, shed some light on those parts by doing this very deep dive into, again, how we got here. It's like retracing your steps. Whenever you lose something around the house or whatever, it's like retracing your steps and understanding, okay, I went from point A to point B, so I wonder what I did in between to have lost whatever, right? We can ask ourselves certain questions, like what kind of influences have we been faced with? In what ways? And what has been done to get here? And then what can be done for the future? It is all history and it all lies with us. And I think it's a burden, a responsibility, and you may not get that or even feel this way yet, but if you give me a couple episodes, I feel like I'm going to get to be kind of the character in Spider-Man where he was like, with great power comes great responsibility. And my friends, knowledge is power, and you're about to get so learned. You're going to have so much power. You're going to have so much understanding. And then being aware, unlocking that like special 10% in your brain or whatever. If you've ever seen the movie Lucy, I like to think of it that way, where it's like she was only capable of doing so much operating on just that 10%, that when she finally started unlocking it, I think she got to the point where she was capable of mind control. And I unfortunately can't offer you that. I don't know anything about science. I barely remember the little grids where you try and figure out like what color your kids' eyes will be, like based on your crush. I don't even remember how to do that. But she began to be capable of so much more. So I like to kind of make that metaphor or a little connection there, because being aware of these things encourages you, I think, and empowers you to change things about what you don't like. If something makes you uncomfortable and you realize, okay, I'm not fine with the way things sit, that you have the ability to change it and to fix it. And guys, you're probably well aware we're sitting in an election year where a lot of important things are on the ballot come November. We have some power regardless of whether or not you think one vote does much. So you cast it and you kind of have to like have faith in a system, right? But even if you can't do that part, we have the ability to make micro changes. Micro changes then become the big macro changes. I sound like a Pinterest board, I know, but it's true. All of the small movements and revolutions that happened and that started to take place, that started off small, became what we have today. Like, they led us to here, especially in the United States, based on everything that I know here, that started off like these small little sparks turned into a wildfire, bringing us to today. And those are all things that we're going to get into. We're going to deep dive down this scary whirlwind of a story. And I'm not going to take it back too far. I don't plan on bombarding you with too much information. Just the right amount. Because, again, a challenge is always good. A challenge is always good for you. It means personal growth, and that's what we're here for. I'm excited to take all of these really big ideas and really maybe sometimes a little bit complicated ideas and show you how they apply to now. Because even though they are pretty complicated at times, it doesn't make them any less relevant to what we deal with today. And I'm glad to do it for you. I'm glad to reach the top shelf and make it accessible because, hey, if I'm the only one that has to have set through the hours of seminars and class time and reading old writing that is so difficult to understand, I'll do it. I'll take the bullet for everyone and I will be the martyr. I will do it for you guys. I like to take inspiration from some new information that I found out recently. I was listening to a podcast and she was talking about Hosier and how his latest album is about Dante's Inferno. If you haven't gotten into the lore of that one, you need to, but I'm not going to dive into it here. What I do remember was that Dante wrote this book, or Dante wrote Inferno during a very rough. It was a very rough time in Italy. There was a civil war that had broken out. So you have Dante, who was a writer, experiencing all of these awful things, watching brothers murder their own brother based on their devotion to their nation or to whatever claim whoever had to whatever. And I'm in like a Game of Thrones kind of mentality right now because I'm binging that. So, pardon, he's taking all of this and he's putting together this story about redemption and the perils that await you if you do not change your ways. And interestingly enough, get this, Dante publishes Inferno in the vernacular, which means he, an Italian writer, published in Italy in Italian. And you may or may not know, during this time in history, most, if not all, of the literary works were published in Latin. Only a very small amount of people could speak Latin or read Latin, and those people were typically the clergymen, scholars, aristocracy, the educated elite. These people were able to, in a way, it was kind of censoring, like they were only letting certain people, obviously if you had the money to learn or have a Latin tutor or whatever, you could learn Latin, but a very small amount of people could understand the language. So he starts this shift of publications and from Latin to the vernacular language. And it was significant for a lot of different reasons. But one of the main ones being literacy. People began to understand things differently and have their own experiences with reading, with whatever, with understanding. And making those texts like accessible to larger audiences, to the common people, enabled this spread of knowledge, this spread of ideas. And then it goes on to, again, these are all tied to history. That goes on to facilitate some religious reform, which not not relevant to today's episode. We might get into that later. But I want to take inspiration from Dante in a way. Take inspiration from Hosier because Hosier then kind of puts his own spin on Dante's Inferno. I want to do that because of how passionate I am about this. So, if you do not care about history, if you feel like it's so unimportant to you, first of all, I want you to give me a chance to convince you otherwise. Because like I said, it's our one shared thing, just our common story as humans. And there's so much drama, there's so much lore to get into. I am enormously excited. Ecstatic. What is the other word? I'm so excited I can't even think of it. But for now, I'm going to put a pin in this and I'm going to leave you on kind of a cliffhanger, if you will. I might have enticed you enough to bring you back for the second episode, which will be out next week. So if you will, please join me then, and we're going to jump into some perhaps not so basic ideas that we all kind of need to understand, at least slightly. We want to start off on the right foot, on the same level foundation. So, join me next week and we will continue down this very long journey. Before you go, I want to thank you again for giving me your ears for however long this took. I'm excited for where we're going from here, and I hope you are too. I will see you next week. Bye.